Hey guys, welcome to your 7-day astro weather report, where we look at the astrology of the week ahead in a summarized and condensed fashion. If you want the deep dives, find me over on Substack or Patreon. We're going to look at the astrology of the week ahead, but we're going to look at it through the lens of Galactic Esoteric Astrology. So we are going to pull in fixed stars and black holes and maybe even some asteroids. I don't know, I have the chart here in front of me. Oh yeah, and some asteroids, and try to give it to you straight. I will try, but you guys know I like to go all the places. Some of you may remember my friend here, my little magnet board that I used to use in videos before I started sharing my screen and using the software. I actually made this. I'm taking custom orders. If anybody wants one, let me know, hit me up. It's a magnet board. And I have little magnet planets. So we're gonna try to kind of talk about things with the board. All right, starting first with Venus. So Venus right now, at the time I am recording this here on the 28th, is sitting at about 27 degrees of Gemini, right at the tail end of Gemini, about to move into Cancer in just 2 days. And so she's right here at the end, and she's actually aligned with a very significant point in our sky. If you follow my work, you've heard me talk about it extensively, and that is the pole star. So the pole star actually falls at 28 degrees of Gemini. She'll be transiting over it sometime tonight into tomorrow morning. And the pole star is arguably the most important star in the sky, at least the ancients seem to think so. The pole star here in the north is the still star that all the other stars rotate around. It's the source of stillness, of oneness, of singularity. The ancients called it the source of all life. And it is depicted in a lot of mythologies as the sacred center, or being the top of the world tree or the mystical mountain of the gods. It has a lot to do symbolically and archetypally and esoterically with helping us to find our middle pillar and helping us to activate that sacred center within. I refer to this area of the sky as the axis mundi, which is this fancy pants Latin term for the center of all things, the center that is found within you in your sacred temple, right? And this pole star, which Venus is currently aligned with, actually sits exactly opposite the galactic center in Sagittarius. And so Venus right now is aligning with both the still point that all of the stars rotate around from Earth's perspective, the pole star, and also the still point that all of the stars in the Milky Way rotate around the galactic center. And so she's being kind of supercharged right now with this area of the sky that gives us the opportunity to activate that source of all life within, that sacred center within ourselves that everything builds upon. The pole star is often looked at as our pineal gland, our sacred star, our northern star, our guiding light that is activated when we activate our axis, which the Earth's axis aligns with the pole star. And that axis is our spinal column. It is our chakra system. It is that like Kundalini activation of our consciousness from lower consciousness up to higher consciousness. And the pole star really represents that. Now, as Venus comes into this alignment right now with the axis mundi, she aspects some things. So the first thing she is aspecting is Chiron. I do not have a Chiron magnet. I need to make one. So we're going to use Pluto because it kind of looks a little bit like a comet. And Venus right now is in a sextile, a harmonious aspect to Chiron in Aries, right at the tail end of Aries, 27 degrees of Aries. That is where Chiron is. That is also where the Andromeda Galaxy is, the black hole at the center of the Andromeda Galaxy. And then we also have an asteroid there right now, and that is the asteroid Eros. Eros is sometimes referred to as Amor or Cupid. He's the dude with the arrow of passion. And he has a lot to do. So Venus is aspecting all three of these things in a harmonious way. A sextile. It requires a little bit of effort to kind of harness that harmony. In this case, we're going to have to put in a little bit of effort towards our healing and our addressing of any sort of core wounds of the self that may impact our relationships, our values, our finances, and really how we can lean into our passions, right? And how we can move through any sort of core wounds that prevent us from tapping into our passion and our desire for experience, our desire for manifestation. And Eros ultimately represents our desire for wholeness. A lot of times we seek that wholeness through another person, and with Venus here, that may be some of the things that's being highlighted, but ideally the highest octave is seeking that wholeness and finding that wholeness within the self. And when you find that wholeness within the self and you balance your yin and your yang, your masculine and your feminine, and you activate that sort of like middle path, that is the sacred center that the pole star represents. And so this is a really beautiful energy that we have going on right now that I recommend taking advantage of, because Venus is about to move into Cancer and she's going to make some tense aspects. And we're going to talk about that here in a second. I do want to touch a little bit on the Andromeda Galaxy. I could talk about these all for hours. This is really hard for me to summarize. And I will be talking about this all for hours over on Patreon, so come find me. Chiron, wounds, healing of the wounds, unlocking the wisdom of those wounds. Eros, this is a star, a little star glyph here, but we're going to pretend it is an asteroid. Eros is all about our passion and also a romantic partnership, as is Andromeda. So this is the center of the Andromeda Galaxy that's being aspected. It's a strong galactic force. It is actually our partner galaxy, and it is shooting towards us right now, us, the Milky Way, in space, and one day we will unite with it and we will create a super galaxy. The Andromeda mythology, which I don't have time to get into here now, and the actual astronomy of Andromeda is all about union, alchemical union, which is ultimately what the pole star represents, is that union within the self, right? And so relationships may be a little rocky right now, especially as Venus moves into Cancer a little bit later this week and tensely aspects Saturn and Neptune, but then it's going to inch closer and closer and closer to Jupiter, which is actually really great and really nice. We won't feel that until about mid-August. And so right now we are being given the opportunity to put in a little bit of effort, do a little work, find our footing, and this is in preparation for some tension that's kind of very closely on the horizon. We're going to get to that here in 1 second. All right, so the major energy of the week is that today Venus comes into a sextile with Chiron, also the Andromeda Galaxy, also Eros. And then on the 30th, let me just move this here. Okay. On the 30th, we have Chiron stationing retrograde, still aspecting Venus, and Venus moving into Cancer. Doop. Venus moves into Cancer, and when she moves into Cancer, she starts to aspect Neptune and Saturn in Aries. So we have Neptune and Saturn retrograde in the beginning degrees of Aries, moving backwards and about to move into Pisces here in a little while. And as Venus moves into Cancer, it squares a 90-degree angle Saturn and Neptune retrograde. This is the same day that Chiron here, also in Aries, stations retrograde in order to retrace his steps and reintegrate some sort of like healing lesson or healing journey that he's been on. He's really been in Aries since 2018. He's been doing a lot of work there, and this is his last retrograde before he moves into Taurus. He will dip back in during his next retrograde, but this is his last one. He's really integrating a major healing journey in the sign and house in your chart that Aries governs that he's been on since 2018. And he's really retracing his steps to kind of see what this is all about. And in Aries, it's wounds around our identity, ourself, the individual. It has a lot to do with like anger and rage as well. And wounds that stand in the way from you being your pioneering self and going out there and doing what you want to do. Aries also has a lot to do with our passions. And as Chiron stations retrograde, he does so in a conjunction to Eros, the god of passion. And so it's really helping us to dig deep into whatever kind of core wounds are preventing us from reaching out and grabbing what we want, our dreams, right? And that has a lot to do with what Saturn and Neptune are doing right now, retrograde, is that they're going to dip. They just moved into Aries. They're just like barely got into Aries, and they station retrograde and they're moving back into Pisces, where they've been for a considerable length of time, especially Neptune. He's been there since 2012, 2011, and it's his home sign. And so he's dipping back into the vision. He's dipping back into the dreamscape. He's dipping back into that collective unconscious, into that spiritual dimension in order to integrate a little bit more of the dream, the vision, and then they're going to move into Aries, the sign of action, and be ready to like actualize that dream. But Venus coming into a square with these points brings this tension, conflict, inner struggle, maybe at home because it's in Cancer, maybe in our relationships, that force us into needed action. And that needed action really revolves around a lot of what these retrogrades are doing, what they are rewriting, what they are restructuring, what they are realigning in the area of your life that is ruled by both Aries and Pisces, because they're going to move in both Aries and Pisces, because they will eventually move into Pisces. And so look and see where the Aries Pisces cusp falls for you, because there is some work being done in that area of your life and a lot of lessons there. Venus comes into a square with Saturn before it moves into a conjunction with Jupiter. The conjunction with Jupiter, we like. This is growth producing. This is optimistic. It's the astrology's two benefics coming together. But before we can experience that growth, Saturn has a lesson for us. Saturn has some restructuring for us. Saturn has some harsh reality for us. And Neptune is retrograde. So Neptune is, my earrings keep clinking against this. Neptune is traditionally the planet of like illusion, delusion, confusion, fantasy, but while retrograde, he is able to really pierce through the fog and see very clearly. And so coming into a square with Venus, we may be seeing very clearly into the realm of finances, resources, and relationships, particularly within a family dynamic, because it's in because it's in Cancer. All right, so a couple more things is that also on the 30th, in just 2 days, Chiron stations retrograde as well. So Chiron here is retrograde in Aries. It's going to be moving back, retracing its step, reintegrating some sort of lesson. I have something written down here somewhere where I was pondering Chiron joining Saturn, Neptune, Pluto, and Mercury all retrograde. And the little sentence that I wrote down was self-realization through suffering, or rediscovery of the self through healing. Very necessary healing. And in order to do that, you have to really retreat into the self, which is what the retrogrades are all asking us to do. Okay. One more thing that I want to kind of talk about is that on the 31st, So this may be when we have that self-realization. Is on the 31st, we have Mercury and the sun conjunct each other in Leo. It's called a cazimi. It's actually Mercury retrograde and the sun conjunct. Mercury has a lot to do with the mind. It has a lot to do with information, has a lot to do with the message coming through. Mercury has been retracing its steps, trying to bring a message through to us in the area of our life ruled by Leo. And we finally see what this was all about when it conjuncts the sun and the sun shines light on it and it makes it conscious for us to see and for us to know. This is that self-realization. This is on the 31st. Definitely pay attention to any sort of like aha moments, realizations, or clarity that comes through on the 31st. This is right around the same time that Venus in Cancer at the realm of our home, our family, our emotional body, having a lot to, we want to look and see what house Cancer rules for you to really see how it's showing up for you. But Cancer has a lot to do with our emotions. It has a lot to do with our family. It has a lot to do with our inner world, our subconscious, our psychological foundations. And the same time that the sun and Mercury are aligning in order to bring some sort of realization to the surface, Venus is squaring off with Saturn and Neptune retrograde. Neptune piercing through, bringing some sort of clarity in a previously foggy situation, and Saturn facing us with reality and some sort of karmic lesson that we need to learn before Venus moves and conjuncts Jupiter, the two benefics here in Cancer, and aligns with Sirius later this month, right as Mercury stations direct. So Mercury stations direct on the 11th, and this lovely alignment here happens on the 12th. We'll talk about this more next week in our little summary video, but this is what we have on the horizon. If things are feeling tense, if there is conflict, these are little catalysts that are forcing you into some sort of needed lesson, some sort of needed change. And so look around and see what it is you're being shown, and you'll probably see and realize what it is on the 31st when we have the Sun Mercury conjunction in Leo. All right, guys, I did pull some cards. This is already longer. I wanted this to be like a 10-minute long video. It's already 18 minutes and we haven't gone to the cards yet. I'll work on summarizing myself. So I pulled some cards for the week's energy. The archetype card I pulled is the Judge, which is, you know, has a lot to do with that reality, some form of like judgment or lesson or harsh truth. We'll read it from a book here in a second. And then I pulled a card. I found this deck. I forgot all about this deck. It used to be one of my favorites. It's called the Cosmic Oracle. It was like handmade by the artist. I bought it directly from her. It doesn't come with the book, but it has a little bit on the bottom of each card. And this one is the Enlightenment card. And it says, do you think you will necessarily be aware of your own enlightenment? I'm trying to focus that on there for you guys, but I guess that's not gonna work. I'm using my phone too, which is supposed to be better. Oh, there we go. Okay. I like this. And I think that the retrogrades speak a lot to that. Like let me try to focus on myself. We aren't ever really aware of the like consciousness raising experiences that happen to and for and all around us. A lot of times when we are in the thick of it and having like a really rough freaking time, those are those growth producing like canon events that bring the character development that ultimately results in enlightenment or us raising our consciousness. And a lot of times while that's happening, we are not in the least bit aware of it. It's something that we notice more in hindsight when we look back on the situation, right? And so this week, yeah, there's some squares to Venus that does bring some issues within relationship dynamics, but Venus is inching closer to a conjunction with Jupiter. There is growth on the horizon. And we got the Mercury retrograde Sun conjunction this week, which helps us to finally realize what our Mercury retrograde story was all about and kind of get over the hump, where that we can focus more on the integration of it as opposed to the like chaos and misalignment of it. After the conjunction, we can tend to kind of move on with that story and be like, okay, that's what this was about, so let me go do that thing that I need to do, right? So it's a week of tests that lead to your enlightenment without you even really knowing it. And I think it's interesting that we've got these alignments with the pole star and the Galactic Center, the Andromeda Galaxy, all of these like higher galactic forces, or these sources of like a sacred center, right? It's a very, very spiritual part of the sky. Okay, so we've got this, and then we got the Judge. So this to me is that square to Saturn, right? Let me go ahead and read this. The Judge, page 89. This is, of course, from the Archetypes deck, the Wild Unknown, my favorite deck. The Judge, the Critic, or Saturn, the Diplomat, the Advocate. The Judge has this card also has a lot to do with like discernment. And I feel like the Neptune retrograde helps bring some discernment to our relationships, helping us to see clearly. And then the Mercury conjunction helps us to finally see, bring some discernment to our conscious mind. Okay, the Judge. The Judge has an incredibly important job. They work every waking hour of every day, helping us discern what is safe, true, and just. When this archetype remains unconscious or is captivated by fear, wise discernment turns into painful judgment of the self and others. Ironically, the Judge's energy can be the seed of racism, bigotry, and fear-mongering. This is the Judge out of balance, building walls, separating from the other. When the same discerning force is made conscious and healed, hi Chiron, however, the Judge may be found advocating for civil rights causes, standing up for the underdog, something we really need in today's world. Oh my God, the world is ripping at its seams. Providing resources for those in need, and forgiving again and again. Love, or high Venus, high Eros. Love is the deciding factor. Awakening this archetype is essential for the complex times we are in. Get your Judge in order. The world needs it. The Judge's energy is contagious. When we feel judged, walls go up all around. Similarly, when we feel accepted, the entire world softens. Gandhi had an incredibly illuminated inner Judge. He was a lawyer. He practiced silence one day a week in order to hone his discernment while on his revolutionary path. When this card is evolved, it's discernment, advocacy, right action, and compassion. And I really feel when we have that Mercury Sun conjunction on the 31st, we'll start to see what the right action is. The discernment really comes through that conjunction, also the square to Neptune. When this card is in its lower archetype, however, it can manifest as feeling very critical, punishing, being unforgiving, or building walls. And it says to go deeper, you can read the myth of Osiris and the white feather of Mahat, where his heart is weighed against the feather to see if he lived like a just and true life. And it has a lot to do with like, did you live a life from a heart-centered place, or did you not? And everybody in Egyptian lore has that weighing, by the Judge Mahat after they die and before they go to the whatever's next. They are judged, much like in Christian lore, we're judged at the pearly gates by Saint Peter, right? How did you live your life? Were you living it from a heart-centered place, or were you living it not from that place? So it's a week of enlightenment and also judgment, right? Honing the judge and also maybe feeling a little bit judged. And through it all, you're asked to find your sacred center and your heart. And that is the true lesson there. All right, guys, I will be seeing you. If you want to dive in very deep, very deep with me to the current astrology, come find me over on Patreon. I will be doing a multi-hour long video to talk all about it, particularly the upcoming full moon in Aquarius. The link is down below. If you want to dive into some of my in-depth written publications and articles, find me down below on Substack. Everybody should be on Substack. Substack is my new favorite app. I love it. The feed is amazing. Everybody is so supportive. There's so much creativity, so much depth, so much enlightenment, so much soul over there. I fucking love it. I love it. The feed is amazing. The written word, the things people have to say, so amazing. I love that app. Come and find me over there. And then of course I'm over on Instagram as well, but that app is definitely dying. And I'll be showing up over here a lot more. So like this video, please, to help my algorithm. Subscribe to my channel if you aren't already. Leave a comment down below and send it to a friend because that really helps. All right, guys, I'll be seeing you. Bye.